Maico Breako, the legend of all Maicos in the world exploding into a million pieces during the first kick. If you've heard of Maico, I'm sure you've heard the term Maico Breako. However, what is the reality? Is it a well-deserved nickname or just propaganda from those wishing they had Maicos? First, let's start off with a few facts. If you Google or search for articles on the worst bikes ever made, not one is a Maico. In fact, they've held the title for one of the best bikes ever made. Here are a few of the articles I found. The links for these lists that I found will be in the description box below. First up, we have xmotorcycle.com's top 10 worst motorcycles of all time. The 1971 Suzuki TM400 Cyclone, TM690 Enduro, Buell Lighting XB9S, Piaggio MP3, Suzuki RE5, Yamaha RD350, Boss Haas, Kawasaki 750 Triple 1V and H2, Yamaha TX750, and the 1981 Harley-Davidson Sportster. Second up, we have Pulp MX's worst bikes ever list. The 1971 Suzuki TM400 Cyclone, the 1973 to 74 Yamaha SC500, 1981 Honda CR450R, the 1983 Kawasaki KX500, the 1984 Husqvarna 125 CR, the 1984 Honda CR500, 1985 Yamaha YZ125, 1998 Honda CR125, 2001 Cannondale MX400, and 2004 Kawasaki KX450 Suzuki RMZ 250. Here is an excerpt from that article. In 1980, Kawasaki had introduced an all-new big bore to compete with the all-powerful Maico open bikes. The Big German was the bike to own in the open class at that time, combining a sweet tractor-like power delivery with excellent chassis dynamics. Kawasaki's attempt at a Maico beater had been a miserable failure. The KX420 was overweight, less powerful, poor handling, and incredibly more fragile than the notoriously finicky German. The big KX420 was such a disaster that Kawasaki completely threw in the towel and did not even attempt to make a 500 class for 1982. The article goes on a little bit later to say, big bore two-strokes are a temperamental bunch by nature. Something about the huge piston makes the monster motors much more difficult to set up. In the 1970s and 80s, virtually all the manufacturers struggled to get these big bikes to run correctly. Yamaha, in fact, spent the entire decade of the 80s trying to get their YZ490 to run cleanly, only to finally give up and quit the 500 class altogether. Next up, we have classicmotorcycles.about.com's the 10 worst handling motorcycles of all time. Number 1, Kawasaki 750 Triple 1V and H2, Kawasaki 500 H1, Honda C50 70 90 110, Honda CX500, Moto Guzzi, Aero, Suzuki GT380 550 750, Husqvarna 250 MX 1970, Greaves, and then the Harley-Davidson Sportster 1981. You will notice that some of these bikes are the same across some of these lists. So the next up we have is Super Hockey's worst dirt bikes of all time. We have number 10 spot. We have 1974 Husky 450 Desert Master, 1981 Honda CR450, Rockton 340, Yamaha SC500 Scrambler, Harley Davidson Baja 100, CZ250 Enduro, Yamaha YZ490, Penton 125 Mudlark, any three-wheeler, and the number one spot, the 1971 Suzuki TM400 Cyclone. Next up, we have Jody Wiesel's The Worst Bikes I Have Ever Rode. 1977 Can-Am MX-3 The Black Widow, 1973 Suzuki TM400, 2001 Cannondale MX400, 1981 Honda CR450, 1975 Harley Davidson 250MX, 2011 Husqvarna TC449, and the 1997 Honda CR250. In another article, My Life as an MXA Test Pilot, Jody writes, "If I could only pick one bike to race, it would be the 1981 Maico 490. This bike was luscious to ride. It cornered like a 125, ran like the Super Chief, and oozed cottage industry charm." Now, I didn't write any of these articles. You can agree or disagree with these lists. It doesn't matter. The simple fact is that not one of these articles mentions Maico in anything but a good light. One article called Maicos finicky, which the older Maicos are known to be, and some of that finicky is due to the older style being carbs. However, most of this finicky can be dealt with through proper and regular maintenance. What I have found is that most Maico Breako is anecdotal. Stories of this or that from some friend or something else. In fact, I was helping a friend, Encore, shop for a bike once, and we ran into a guy selling a bike, and when we were testing it, his neighbor came over, and we had gotten to the conversation that I had some Maicos. So, he told me that he, back in the day, knew someone who was making Maico side cases, and instead of saying Maico on them, they would say Maico Breako on them. So you've got to be kidding me. You created an engine casting molding and melted metal, made side cases for motorcycles just so that they would say Maico Breako on them instead of maintaining your bike properly. Not only that, but if these bikes are that bad, why are you spending your time making side cases for them? I mean, this in itself is completely anecdotal and is one of the most ridiculous things I had ever heard. Simple fact, bikes break. Bikes age over time as well, components wear down, they break. There are a lot of Maicos still out there, and if you ever go to a vintage racetrack, there's races where all the bikes in it are Maico. For all of them breaking so much, why are they still around? And why is everyone racing them in vintage? If you ask my opinion, the three main pieces of the older Maicos that were more finicky would be, the first one would be the kickstarter mechanism. It was not as solid as it should be, but again they had compression releases to alleviate the pressure from those components so you wouldn't have any issues with it. The second is the bings. They're finicky, they can be hard to start sometimes, but again you could also put a Mikuni on a Maico and it worked just fine. And some people are excellent with bings and they have no problem whatsoever. So that is kind of a personal experience there. The last part is the primary chain. And Maicos have a primary chain in the motor and you just have to change it to when it needs changed. I mean, how long do you race or ride your dirt bike with your rear chain on it? You have to keep tightening it. It stretches over time. As long as you did the proper maintenance and changed your primary chain when it needed changing, you wouldn't have a problem. In 1983, Maicos went full modern. They no longer have primary chains. Even the bings they use have chokes on them. And I've been riding Maicos for years. I've had no problem whatsoever with them. I have no problem that I haven't had on a Honda or Suzuki or Yamaha or some other bike. You know, basic maintenance things have happened. And again, my bikes are 30 years old, so even if something does break, which never does, but even if something does break, again, the part's 30 years old. They wear down over time. I've ridden on the trails people with new bikes. They've blown up. I had a CR125 guy was riding and blew up. I've seen other bikes blow up. Many bikes blow up, and some of it is either they did something improperly to it, they didn't maintain it correctly, or whatever. But modern bikes, old bikes, they all have problems. They all blow up. They all need their regular maintenance. I have seen nothing that justifies singling out a single manufacturer's Maico and then giving them the Maico Breako nickname and not doing it for everyone else. That being said, since I have a Maico, if my bike won't start, or it's flooded, or I got just a clutch cable, it's automatically Maico Breako. You know, my chain breaks, Maico Breako. Okay, so simple things that could happen on any bike for no reason. It's just associated with Maico Breako, which makes no sense. So, you know, I've had to adjust clutch cables. I've flooded bikes up before. I've had to clean the carbs before. They wouldn't start because I had to kill switch grounded or something like that. So, whatever. You know, I've had chains break. But again, nothing that I haven't had happen on Japanese bike. In fact, my Honda CRF 500, it mushroomed out the clutch push rod to where the metal mushroomed out around the edge, and so you couldn't disengage clutch anymore without taking apart the entire engine to get that clutch push rod out. You couldn't even just take the clutch cover off. You had to disassemble the engine in half to get that out. It mushroomed and it got stuck. That happened with my 86 CRF 500. My 1979 Honda CR 125, second gear went out. It wouldn't engage properly. It kept jumping out of gear. And so those are anecdotal stories of mine, but so was my account of any Maico issues. So I haven't, again, had any issues that I wouldn't say you wouldn't have on any bike. Now, here, I have gone on the internet, on YouTube, and if you search around, you can find problems with other bikes. And that's what I'm going to show here. I'm going to show, right or wrong, bikes blowing up from other manufacturers, or bikes having problems. And I'm going to give them nicknames here. And so you tell me if that's a fair assumption here, or if that's something that makes sense to do, because these are modern bikes that have blown up. Yamaha.
Fy fan, helvete.
Honda bomb. Cowie Kaplowy. Just KT because the M broke off.
European quality.
You're rid of the pain and
There's the other half. Going for a ride, Tom? Nice little stress crack in there.
He's ready to rip.
I'm not making the case here that these bikes are junk. Not at all. And many people will just say regular maintenance would have prevented those issues. And that's fine. Because that's all we're saying about Maico. Regular maintenance would prevent issues. When you stress any bike, they will eventually fail. They're not bulletproof. They're not made of indestructible material. They have stress points. Those stress points fail depending on how you ride and use them and how you maintain them. Plus, you could have gotten a bad part when you put something in, or a substandard part and put it in, and that could have been the problem. So these are, again, but my only reason for bringing these up is that, well, I've shown you that, for example, let's go back to Honda. I showed you a video of Honda blowing up. We have bikes that are the worst bikes ever completely just bad bikes that were made by Honda. Yet you don't have that stigma or that label of Honda being bad or a bad manufacturer or Honda breaking all the time. However, you have that stigma with Maico, which my point is, for the most part, is unfounded. So has this been misinformation? Has this been information that maybe was propagated around to shy people away from Maico? Paul Pincinot of Pincinot Moto X has said this as well, that and I'll quote him here from a message board, was that it has been misinformation since the 1970s. I had a 1974 Maico 250, new in 74. I put tires, chains, and grips and trans oil in it for the most of that season. Ran it all year on the same piston and ring at one primary chain, and I broke a fender. I bought the bike for $14.75 and spent about $300 keeping it on the track. This bike made anyone a better rider. It was so stable, so easy to ride. Sweepers, jumps, deep whoops. In 1975, I bought a new 76 RM250 in one season. I put tires, chains, trans oil, rear hub, rear shocks, 3 fork kits, 10 motor mount bolts, frame needed welded repairs twice, 2 sets of low ring bearings, 2 OEM oversized pistons, the 2 Wiseco oversized pistons, fenders, nuts, bolts just fell off. 2 sets of bars from crashes, front spokes, swing arm bearing kits, lots of aftermarket parts to replace cheap OEM parts like the chain guide, bars, grips, filters, shift levers, seat foam. I bought the bike new from the dealer for $13.50. I spent $1,500 keeping it going. I raced intermediate class. I never did a comfortable on a bike, and it was far from reliable and was fragile. And he had similar experience on the KX. He also says, whenever talking about, back then he was also a dealer, a Maico dealer, so or at least at some point he was also a Maico dealer. So he says about his later year models. My 1983 Maico 490 broke a gear in the training after 4 or 5 rides. I raced a local pro class back then, no sponsor, and Maico paid for the new parts I needed. My dealer told me he had gotten a bulletin about the problem, and the first 200 motors had second and third gear issues. I have never seen an aluminum Maico hub brake, but have had magnesium hub brake. Mag hubs were only on the 77, 78 models, not 83. I have a feeling the hub incident was typical of one dippy that had a problem and made a mountain out of it. Funny how you don't hear much of all the kicks, frames breaking, Yamaha main bearings, spinning in the case, Suzuki's hubs breaking, and all the injuries from the air handling production bikes. I'm surprised that there are any of the big 4 bikes still around. So essentially what we're talking about is that there were some training issues in a couple of the bikes from 83, and then people made a mountain out of it. But for the most part, like I said, I had an 83. I see lots of 83s around, and they don't have problems. And not to mention that there are Japanese big 4 bike, KTMs that have had transmission problems as well. So it's not something that was specific to Maico that happened here. And so again, this is someone else's experience and another anecdotal evidence. But like I said, if it doesn't make sense to single out Maico for having some issues that in the least you can say are common across the board for many manufacturers.
I know everybody cares. Radiator seal.
Sorry. You get a leak?
Yeah, that oil ring blew out of the bottom of the radiator.
Oh, yeah.
So let's go straight down to Brown's camp, or is it?
No.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. You can also subscribe to my channel for more dirt biking videos like this one. And don't forget, you can leave me a comment below. Thanks for watching.